Dear students, in continuation of the topic, the Mughal period, today we are going to focus on Jahangir, the fourth important ruler. We started with Babur, then we had some idea of Humayun, and then we discussed about Akbar. And today we'll be trying to get some kind of idea on Jahangir, his times, and the way the empire was there. There isn't much of a change in terms of policies that were adopted by Jahangir in the administration of the Mughal state. Jahangir continued the same policies as followed by Akbar, and he also had almost the same conception of Akbar, where he wanted a liberal state. And this was the period of Jahangir is the period from where you can see and trace out the real fruits of the Mughal dynasty reaching out to the common man, where you can see some kind of a prosperity, you can see some kind of plenty, you can see some kind of real urbanization going on, you can see industrial growth, you can see in the rural side cottage industries developing. So all these developments that have taken place in the medieval period can be traced out from the times of Jahangir very clearly. So this is a very important period. With this brief introduction, we will go into the details of the period of Jahangir. Here I have picked up some slides which will give you an idea of the times of Jahangir, and we will be able to, when you look at the visuals, you can very clearly see that these visuals promoted some certain kind of richness, whether it was in the tombs or whether it was in the construction or painting, etc. Jahangir was a great patron. Jahangir and Shah Jahan, both of them were the great patrons of art, architecture, painting, music, etc. So based on this kind of the development of finer aspects of mankind, see, generally we say that dance, music, drama, poetry, etc., the finer aspects of mankind. And based on these finer aspects of mankind, you have this period been summarized as one of the golden age by some of the historians in explaining the period of the Mughal dynasty. So we will discuss about, he ruled for a period of around about 22 years, and we will just try to see what are all the developments in this particular period. The next slide, which I have taken, is a painting of Jahangir. And as I have given the information, he was born on 31st August at Fatehpur Sikri in the year 1569. And he died on 28th October 1627 at Rajouri. And spouse here, I mean, his wife was Noor Jahan. And Noor Jahan played a very important role on the Mughal Empire. Here I have a portrait of Noor Jahan, and she was a profound influence, where Jahangir himself personally admitted that I have bequeathed my crown and throne for a cup of wine and woman. And the woman he was referring to was Noor Jahan. She was quite a beautiful woman, and she has been compared with some of the topmost, what should I say, beautiful women in the world. This photograph, which I am showing you, is Jahangir taking a walk in the garden with Noor Jahan. Okay, and this is one of the portrait showing you the deliberations of Jahangir with his people. So we have a series of, if you just see the portraits, you can see the richness of the painting and the richness of the period and times. So we have several photographs here. Here you can see Akbar, the eating habits of the royal family. I think so. This is a portrait of Akbar having his food with his children. And I think so. It is also showing Jahangir having food with his father. So these are some of the important portraits. Now we try to go into the finer details of the Mughal Empire and the time and period of Jahangir. See, you can see this map. This map is an important map, which is giving you an idea. The light, what should I say, orange color, which is there in the first, it is showing the extent of Mughal Empire in 1530. That is during the time of the Babur and Humayun. And then the green portion shows the expansion, and the orange portion shows the extent of Mughal Empire during the time or after the death of, at the time of the death of Aurangzeb. And you can also see the boundary of Suri Empire. The green line, which you find running on the map, shows the extent of the Seshasur, who was also a very important ruler, though not a Mughal ruler. He was an Afghan, a very important person who in fact had given the idea of a state, which was taken up by the Mughals in the initial stages by Akbar, and at a later stage by Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and to some extent Aurangzeb. When we are trying to talk about the state, the Mughal state, which you see on the photo, the period of Akbar and Jahangir, they did not have much of a difference in terms of policies and administrative principles. But when you come down to the times of Shah Jahan and Jahangir, there have been some slight changes that have been made by Jahangir, and Aurangzeb completely reversed the idea of a state which was envisaged by Akbar himself. So when you just try to take the entire Mughal period into consideration, from say 1556, I would say, from the times of Akbar down to 1707, you can divide the phase, the period into two phases. The first phase, where Akbar and Jahangir followed a similar idea of principles of administration, philosophy of state, etc. And a second phase, where you have the period of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, which had a fatal impact on the empire of the Mughal Empire, the vast empire which you see in the photo. And that led to the disintegration of the Mughal Empire. So when we're trying to understand the causes for the downfall of the Mughal Empire, such a vast empire, you will have to put more focus on the periods of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, where in the initial stages a crisis emerges in the Mansabdari system, which ultimately leads to the political disintegration of the Mughal Empire, which is considered to be the downfall, or one of the major factors for the downfall of the Mughal Empire. We will try to focus on this particular point of view when we take up Aurangzeb's period. But limit to now, we will focus on the times of Jahangir. As I have shown you in the first portrait, where I have mentioned the period of Jahangir, we will just try to concentrate on this particular period and see what are the developments during his particular period. As I told you, I have given you the basic details on that. And as far as reforms, we will take up the first point. What were the reforms under Jahangir? As soon as he ascended the throne, Jahangir issued various orders by the way of useful, what he felt were useful and were in the interest of the people. And these were, you can say that they were 12 edicts or proclamations which were given by Jahangir after the accession or after sitting on the throne of Delhi. Some of these are important. I will mention a few of these reforms. One of the most important reforms was abolition of barbarous punishment, such as miming or cutting of the nose, ears, etc. See, during the period of Akbar, he had issued capital punishment in certain cases, and the punishment in kind of any kind of a civil disobedience or any kind of a treachery against the state was the people had to meet, or the nobility also had to meet with severe punishments. this policy was reversed, and he felt it was barbaric. So any kind of a physical mutilation, like cutting off the ears, nose, or hands, or etc., was abandoned during the time of Jahangir. This was a major reform. And he also forbade taking intoxicating drinks or drugs. Though he himself had taken up to drinking of wine a lot, but in terms of the interests of the people, he had completely put a ban on or forbidden the drinks and drugs. Okay, and then the third important reform that he took up was the abolition of many transit and customs duties such as Tanka and Mir Bahari. Tanka and Mir Bahari. These were the two kind of taxes which were imposed on the import, export, and the transit of finished goods from one part of the country to another part of the country. So at different levels, when the goods were on transit, these goods, I'll just show you a map of Jahangir's period. You can see the vastness of the map. And this map, when the goods were being transported, there were different kinds of taxes that were being levied. So to prevent and to promote, sorry, not to prevent, to promote tax trade, he had abolished certain taxes which were imposed on transit in the vast empire. Okay, and then the fourth important was prohibition of slaughter of animals on certain specific days, killing of animals on certain specific days. These were some of the important reforms. And then the fifth one you can see was the establishment of hospitals and construction of wells. This was for the promotion of construction of hospital was for the welfare of the people. Promotion, digging up of wells was in the interest of agriculture. And then you have on the religious grounds, you have masjids being constructed and chowdhuries being constructed, and the Grand Trunk roads being constructed. So these are all some kind of reforms which were taken up uniformly over the vast stretch of the powerful, mighty Mughal Empire, which went into the cause or the development of not only the state, but also the penetration of the Mughal administration to the grassroots levels. Okay, now I'll just try to give you some idea of the important developments that had taken place during the time of Jahangir. Jahangir, to a very great extent, was a man who was dominated by Noor Jahan. In fact, when we are trying to talk about the period of Jahangir, it was strictly speaking, or effectively speaking, not strictly, effectively speaking, it was the administration of Noor Jahan and the way she wanted to rule the country and the way she had some kind of a profound influence. I had told you earlier also, Jahangir himself personally admits that I have bequeathed. Bequeathed means to give away. Okay, I have bequeathed my crown and throne for a cup of wine and women. So that was the kind of profound influence that Noor Jahan had on Jahangir. And here when we are talking of the administration, the reforms, and whether it is the expansionist policy or constructional activity to some extent that went on during this period of Jahangir, you have the stamp of Noor Jahan on every perception of understanding the period and times of Jahangir. Okay, so we will start with the rebellion. The first important development that we have in this particular period is the rebellion of Khusro. And Khusro was Jahangir's eldest son, and who was very handsome and noble and enlightened and popular prince. He was a popular prince, encouraged by his uncle Raja Man Singh. He was encouraged by his uncle Raja Man Singh, and he rebelled against Jahangir. He left Agra. Sorry, he left Agra and advanced on towards Lahore and had seized it. So he was trying to take control of Lahore and laid a siege of it and revolted against the Mughal Empire and the Jahangir, his own father, went into pursuit of him. So Jahangir pursued him. The royal forces defeated Prince Khusro, who fled to Kabul. From Lahore, he fled to Kabul, and it is said that after crossing Chenab near Wazirabad, he was captured and put to prison. It is said that Khusro was murdered by Prince Khurram, Shah Jahan instigated by Nur Jahan. Okay, so Khurram and Khusro, both of them were sons, and Khurram was the son of Nur Jahan. As I was telling you, Nur Jahan had a profound influence. There is an idea that the death of Khusro was to promote the interests of Khurram and put an end to the Khusro's rebellion. So this is an important development. After that, Khusro was fleeing. Fleeing means running away. He had taken the shelter at Guru Arjan Dev, one of the Sikh gurus, and this made Shah Jahan very angry, and Jahangir very angry, and Guru Arjan Dev had not only given him an asylum, but also had given some kind of financial assistance to rebel and go against the Mughal Empire. So this was one of the reasons why Guru Arjan Dev was put to death by Jahangir, and since then the Sikhs become the enemies of the Mughal Empire. Okay, so after this you have the ceremony of where Jahangir marries the beautiful lady Nur Jahan, and he gives her the title Nur Jahan, which literally means the light of the world. And as I'm telling you, she had profound influence. So after the marriage of Nur Jahan, I'll again show you a portrait of Nur Jahan, one of the most beautiful women. So this lady had a profound influence, right from promoting her son's interest, putting an end to Khusro's fortunes of becoming a Mughal emperor. Everything you have a stamp of Nur Jahan on the Mughal Empire once she becomes the empress. Nur Jahan was the daughter of a Persian nobleman. Her father's name was Mirza Ghaz Beg or Khosran, who came to India seeking his fortune. And he had entered Akbar's court and became a small mansabdar, and later got the Diwan of Kabul. He got the Diwan of Kabul during the time of Akbar. While Meherunisa was in Akbar's court, Jahangir falls in love with her and eventually marries her. Now just trying to give, that is an antecedent of Nur Jahan. We have to mention Nur Jahan effectively when we are talking of Jahangir's period, because of the fact that she had a profound influence not only on Jahangir, but also on the administration and the policies of the Mughal Empire. So now let us just try to get an idea of what was her personality and what was the ideas that she had with her, where she, here again I'm showing you a portrait of Nur Jahan. Nur Jahan was a very wise and accomplished woman. She was a woman of uncommon merit and exceptional talent. Exceptional talent. She was fond of Persian literature. She was fond of poetry and could compose 5 verses at a time. This shows the kind of intellect that she had, and she possessed considerable courage and strength. A very brave lady, and took delight in hunting expeditions. That itself shows the inside. Why I'm giving you all this information is you should know this lady from inside and the kind of intellect that she had, as a result of which someone as powerful as Jahangir, who had inherited the vast Mughal Empire, very clearly says that I have big feathered my crown and thrown for a cup of wine and women. So she defied the marriage, proposals for of Jahangir for a period of 4 years, and eventually she marries him. And but after that, she went on taking control of Jahangir completely, And she started, what do you say, the power play in the Mughal court. The power play starts here. There's a very interesting book written by Satish Chandra, where he has written about party politics in Mughal court. Here, when I am trying to talk of party politics, I'm not talking of the modern day parties. I'm talking of such kind of social groups like the nobility, the ulema, etc., who were having some kind of a proximity, closeness with either the king, queen, or the king, started playing a political game. And this, which had affected not only the political interest, but also had an impact on the social structure of the Mughal period and times. And this was the time where from you can trace out very clearly Nur Jahan encouraging certain nobility, okay, to see that she could have a total control over the Mughal Empire. So not only based on this, there were other groups also. For your understanding and a better reading of the kind of social groups and political groups, which when I refer social groups, I'm referring to the nobility, ulema, etc. When I am referring to political groups, I am referring to people or individuals who are close to the royal family. So, and who were in a position to influence either Nur Jahan or Jahangir or Shah Jahan or any of the Mughal emperors. So they formed the political cloud, and the social cloud basically consisted of the Mansabdars, etc. And you can trace out the party politics in the Mughal court from this particular period onward. So the period of Nur Jahan becomes a very important period in understanding the changes that come up in the political prospects of the Mughal Empire. So again, coming back to, after giving you a brief introduction and some information about Nur Jahan, we will try to concentrate on the conquest of Jahangir. One of the first and the most important war was the war with the Mewar king, who was Raja Amar Singh, son of the famous Rana Pratap Singh. Son of the famous Rana Pratap Singh. So Mewar was still coming up with resistance. That is, the Rajputs were still resisting the penetration or the sovereignty or the suzerainty of the Mughals over the entire of Rajputana. You can see Mewar. You have Chittor, Chandeli, Malwa, Jodhpur, Ajmer, Ranthambore. All these areas are around Mewar, and Mewar and its suburbs, all the places which I mentioned now, are strong footholds of the Rajputs. So this region which I am referring to, Chittor, Bundelkhand, Chanderi, Malwa, Mewar, Jodhpur, Marwar, okay, all these regions, they are strong footholds of the Rajputs. So in the year 1614, again, the Rajput resistance against the Mughal supremacy emerges. So this is an important battle, and Rana Pratap or Rana Amar Singh refused to submit to Jahangir. He, in the initial stages, he sent a letter and then led an expedition against him, but without success. At last, in 1614, Prince Khurram defeated him, and he submitted to Prince Khurram. However, Amar Singh was treated with kindness, and he was treated generously, and Amar Singh was not compelled to attend a court in person. The Rana's son, Karna, Amar Singh's son, Karna, was appointed as a high military commander or a mansab in the imperial army, and a major region was given to this man. So besides, Jahangir caused life-size statues of Rana. Just to please see, if you take these regions, again, I'll just mention it. I'll mention some of these regions, strongholds of Rajputs, the Bundelkhand, Chittor, Mewar, Chanderi, Kalinjar, Marwar, all this. So in this particular region, he comes up with a statue of the Rana just to please and appease the Rajputs. See, the Rajputs, a policy of the Rajputs throughout the Mughal Empire had to be a policy of appeasement. Otherwise, they could have become a divisive force and would have gone against the interest and the political fortunes of the Mughal Empire. So whenever a Rajput fort came under the control, or whenever the Rajputs were defeated in course of battles or wars, they were treated with honor, and if possible, if they were interested, they were integrated into the Mughal imperial service. Similarly, Rana was also integrated into the Mughal imperial service. And not only that, a statue to appease the Rajputs was put up by Jahangir at Agra. So the Jahangir put up an end to the Mughal Mewar hostility. So it was Jahangir's policy of not only expansion, but policy of policy of appeasement of these regions, Chittor, Mewar, etc., which made Mewar an integral part of the Mughal Empire, and which made Mewar contribute to the Mughal service. And after that, after Mewar, one of the important Rajput confederated regions, the next one was Kangra, and this was in the year 1620. And Jahangir was a very proud of his conquest. Also, again, Khurram was used. Khurram was used to subjugate. Khurram was given the order. You see, when you're promoting of Khurram, you can see that it was Nur Jahan who was promoting Khurram. Okay, and Nur Jahan had such a profound influence on Jahangir that he could not say anything against Nur Jahan. So the first expedition that was went towards Mewar, you have Khurram's involvement. The second, that is Kangra, you have Khurram's involvement, and all support that was needed from the Mughal court was being extended to Khurram by Nur Jahan. So you have Kangra also coming under the control of the Mughal Empire in the year 1620. And in the next year, that is in the year 1622, the Kandar provinces, if you can see in the map, please keep, I'm keeping this map constantly when I'm talking of the expansionist policy so that you can understand it clearly. And please look into the map. So Kandra had been conquered by Akbar in 1622, and Shah Abbas, the king of Iran, recovered it from Jahangir during the period of Jahangir. So Akbar had gained Kandar and Jahangir had lost Kandar. So this is one loss, one reverse when you're talking of the expansion policy of the Mughals. Then we will have to concentrate. These were the two important battles that were taken up by Jahangir in the north. And after that, we will have to see what was his policies towards Deccan. You can see Ahmednagar in the map. And you have the Deccan policy begins with a war with Ahmednagar. Ahmednagar, which had been conquered in 1600, declared its independence. Under Akbar, it was conquered and declares its independence in 1610 under its very able and a capable Abyssinian minister, and his name was Malik Ambar. So Malik Ambar revolts and in Ahmednagar and makes Ahmednagar an independent state and goes against Mughal imperialism. Jahangir sent again Prince Khurram to annex this kingdom, and Ahmednagar falls to the Mughals, and the Mughals could not establish their rule in Ahmednagar. So the Ahmednagar was continues to be an independent kingdom. The attempt by the Mughals, to some extent, was a very big failure. So now we will have to see Jahangir's relations with the Portuguese. I will show you a portrait of a Portuguese merchant. This is a portrait of a Portuguese merchant, and you can see that the portrait, the relations with the Portuguese had improved. And now I am showing you a photo of Jahangir and Shah Jahan on horseback taking a ride on the horseback during this particular period. So I have shown you a portrait of Portuguese. I've shown you Khurram and Jahangir, and now we will go back to the map. Okay, so the Portuguese, when we are trying to understand, Jahangir's relations with the Portuguese were good to begin with. They maintained good relations with the Mughals because Mughals were very powerful during the time of Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. None of the British powers made any attempt to interfere in the political conditions during the reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. So Jahangir's relations with the Portuguese were good to begin with, and they wielded considerable influence with the emperor. Portuguese had some kind of influence on the Mughal emperor, and the Portuguese did not last long. But this kind of a honeymoon that was there between the Mughals and the Portuguese, it did not last long because of an act of piracy by the Portuguese, and they lost grace with the emperor. This resulted in Jahangir bestowing his favors on the British. So, British are the among the European powers. The first were to come were the Portuguese, and then you have the Britishers also coming. So, in the initial stages, you have, as I was trying to tell you, I'm repeating this particular point. You have the Portuguese playing an important role. They had a profound influence, but when they had a kind of a piracy against the Mughal emperor, they were pushed back and they were led on, and the Britishers start playing an important role during the time of Jahangir, and the Britishers also get a land grant in and around Hooghly in West Bengal. Okay, so now we will just see his relations with sorry, the English or the Britishers. Captain William Hawkins, an English sea captain, arrived in the court of Jahangir with a letter from King James praying for certain privileges in 1608. In 1608, this was the period in which he comes, and he succeeds in obtaining permission from Jahangir to set up a trading factory at Surat. So William Hawkins comes from Britain with a permission, with a letter, a request letter from the British king, and the request is to establish a factory at Surat, a trading factory at Surat. So the British start, the British have taken their foot on the Indian soil during the time of Jahangir. But owing to the intrigues of the Portuguese, the permission was cancelled. So in the initial stages, permission was not given, and it is only after and when the Portuguese fall off from the Britishers, from the Mughals, the Britishers were encouraged. Another, so the first attempt by William Hawkins fails. The British don't leave their efforts; they are consistent. And then this next trader, that is Edwards, also comes from James I, and he was received well with by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, and the trade mission of Hawkins and Edwards were followed by an embassy of Sir Thomas Roe. So the efforts of Hawkins, the efforts of Edwards, the efforts of Thomas Roe finally helped them in getting a permission to establish trading links in the Mughal court or in the Mughal kingdom. So Thomas Roe arrived in the year 1615. He was a very astute politician. His object was to secure some privileges under any circumstances and establish the East India Company, the British East India Company. He stayed here for 3 years and succeeded in securing, securing some concessions sought for a formal treaty from Jahangir, and the English get permission to build a factory at Surat. Okay, so the finally the British take a foot on the Indian soil, and the factory is built, and that leads to the establishment of the British East India Company. So when this was going on, you have the rebellion of Khurram. Okay. Ladli Begum, Nurjahan's daughter by Sher Afghan, was married to Prince Shahryar, the youngest son of Jahangir. Nurjahan was therefore plotting to secure the accession of her son-in-law Shahryar to the throne. See, at every stage you have Nurjahan interfering. Okay, in the first stage she was against Khusro, then to some extent she promoted Khurram, and now that Khurram was gaining popularity, she did not want Khurram. She wanted to promote Shahryar, who was her son-in-law. But he was defeated by Muhammad Khan, who fled to Deccan. So Shahryar, who was the son-in-law, he flees to Deccan when he was defeated in a battle by Muhammad Khan, where he had joined Malik Akbar. So he flees to the Deccan and joins Malik Akbar, his old enemy. In the year 1625, Prince Khurram, now popularly taking up the title of Shah Jahan, admitted his father and sent his sons Dara and Aurangzeb as hostages to his father and surrendered the forts of Rohtas, Asikgarh, but he remained in Deccan till the death of his father. Okay, so this was what the intrigues that went on in the period of, what should I say, Jahangir. You have plots, subplots, sons, son-in-laws plotting against each other, Nur Jahan interfering in the affairs of the Mughal Empire, and finally you have a period of Jahangir. You have two important battles and a certain amount of loss, and the last phase of Jahangir was completely a period of intrigues between his sons and son-in-laws. So in the year 1627, you can consider them as the last days of Jahangir. Jahangir was clouded, I mean, was completely taken by the sorrows and misfortune. Okay, his life, the last phase of Jahangir, it is all completely a period of sorrows and misfortune, and he was addicted to drink. He takes up to drinks because of the kind of disaffection that was shown to him by his sons and his daughter also, and suffered from asthma. Because of this, he suffers from asthma the last few years, and his second son Parvez died earlier to him. So all this kind of emotional background to which Jahangir was submitted in the last phase of this his period. And when he was undergoing this kind of mental agony, Shah Jahan revolts in open. Shah Jahan revolts in open and claims the Mughal Empire, and he died in the year 1627 and was buried in the beautiful tomb of Chandra near Lahore. I will show you some of the tombs that were taken up, built during the period. This is a portrait of coins that were made during the time of Jahangir. And now this is the tomb of Nur Jahan. Both the tombs of Nur Jahan and Jahangir were close by. And this is the inside view. Okay, you can see the richness of the painting and the color combination and the intricate design, the floral pattern, and even the floor, the walls, the roof, everything. You can see that richness of a culture in promoting the painting during this particular period. So this was the last days were crowded, and here you can see the Jahangir Mahal, which was made during the period of Jahangir. And these are some of the constructions that have taken up during the time of Jahangir. The last days of Jahangir were shrouded by a lot of pain and personal misery. Now, making an estimate of Jahangir at an individual level, Jahangir was a very versatile scholar, and he was interested in languages, he was interested in history, he was interested in geography, he was interested in natural science, he was interested in painting, he was interested in drawing, music, architecture, and horticulture. So different kinds of areas of interest. And he had a personal stamp on it also. He started promoting all this, which I just mentioned now. And he was a good, he enjoyed hunting. And Nurjahan used to accompany him whenever he used to go for hunting. And he was a good sportsman. A sportsman, the art of attacking with a sword. Okay, so you call him a good sportsman, a person who is able to attack the enemy by moving a sword in the air is called a swordsman. So he was very efficient at that. And you have his authentic memories, Tuziki I Jahangiri. Tuziki I Jahangiri is his memories, which covered almost 19 years of his reign. He was there for a period of 23 years. Out of these 23 years, 19 years of his reign, of his rule, are covered in this book, in his memories, Tuziki I Jahangiri, which gives us a wonderful picture of what Jahangir was made of inside and what he was outside. He was also addicted to drinks, and he used to enjoy poetry a lot in the drunken state. And this was one thing which, in fact, one drawback of Jahangir's personality, which became a convenient factor for Nurjahan to take over and dominate the affairs of the Mughal court. Okay, so in the end, we can say that he was a great lover of beauty. He was what should I say, a great lover of gardens and beauty. Most of the gardens that you find are credited to his particular period. He was also interested in architecture, and he was made notable constructions like the Akbar tomb, the Sikandara, the Iman-ud-Dawla tomb near Agra, and the Great Mosque of Lahore. So these are the important aspects of covered to be during the time of Jahangir. And now I'm showing you a complete, what should I say, picture of the entire Mughal family, right from Babur, or in fact, who was a descendant of Taimur, down to Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was one of the last rulers of the Mughal Empire. And you can see this. So we will continue our topic with after Jahangir, we have Shah Jahan. And we have discussed about the conflict between Khusro Mirza and Shah Jahan. And so we will be taking up Shah Jahan's period in the next class. Thank you all.